Hey guys, welcome back. Glad to see you again. So I'm going to do a brief introduction on Aleks just to show you where some things are and talk a little bit about what exactly is in there. We'll talk in more detail about the lab part later, so that will happen later. And so that will include both the virtual labs and the post labs. So I'm mostly going to be talking about some of the features that are in Aleks that you need to be aware of, like how to find the textbook, how to find your assignments list, what assignment you're supposed to be doing, yay, and then how to filter some of the views and things like that so that you can see what you need to see. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we're looking at one of the Aleks shells here. This may not be exactly your shell, so sorry if you're in the fast forward course. This is the shell for the other class that I have. I'm going to go ahead and get into the student view here so that you can see exactly what you will see when you come into this. And so what you'll see here, this is a little Aleks pie, and it will fill in as you do stuff. It will not fill in everything. That is not something that happens. This is designed for a 110 class at major universities, so there are a lot more topics that we do not necessarily cover that are included in the pathway, quote unquote, for this class. So not everything gets filled in. So you can go to the view assignment list, and I'll show your assignments. But first, I want to show you how you get to the textbook and the other way you can get to your assignment. So if you click on the three little bars here, you'll see down here that there is a thing that says textbook. And if you click that ebook, it'll open up the book in another tab. Now, as we discussed previously, there are sections of this that you are supposed to be reading. They're listed in the schedule in D2L. So there is that. You can jump to any part of this book, and once you get to the initial page for that particular chapter, you'll see that there are links to each of those sections. And if you click one of those links, it'll take you directly there. Okay, so that is the material that you're supposed to be looking at in the textbook. It is my expectation that you will have looked at that material before you come to lecture. And again, the reason that I say that is because really, we do not want the first time you see this material to be in lecture. Okay, lecture should be a place where you are solidifying those ideas and getting a better sense of what they actually mean. If you have any questions, you can, pose them, get them talked about. But lecture should not be a place that you're encountering this material for the first time. That's not how this course is designed, and that's really not how chemistry is going to work. So it is important that you consult with your text as well. Okay. One other thing I'll tell you about is that within the book contents, you'll see that there's at the very end, I could have sworn that each chapter had chapter 12 ending. If you go, you got to go up here to see it. So if you use this drop down, then you do the ending part. This will show you the learning objectives, where each of them are. You'll see the key equations for this particular chapter. And again, since we don't do every chapter in the order that they do it, not all of those will apply. You'll see a summary of the concepts and facts. You'll see the keywords and where their definitions are for any of them. And there's a little definition there. And then you'll see questions and problems. So these are things that the writer of this textbook thinks that you should be able to do after having read this chapter. So some of these are specific to each section. Not all of them are. You'll get to a place where they are just listed as problems, and these could be from anywhere. Some of these have answers, some of them don't. So if they have answers, they'll show you just exactly what that answer, the numerical answer, is. Okay, so there is that. There's a study guide that is available for this, and if you need to look at one of those, I can get access to it. You just need to let me know what you want to see, and I can get access to that. Okay, so that's your textbook. understand that you have a textbook available and you are encouraged to use it. Now, the other thing you can do is either way, you can come to your assignment list. You'll see that there's not a lot open right now. Okay, that doesn't mean it's not open. It just means that it thinks it's too far in the future for you to be worried about. What I encourage you to do, especially at the beginning of the course, is to do a view all. And the reason I say that is because it's really important that you understand how much work we're going to be talking about for the time that you're going to be taking this class. There is a lot of work that is involved in this course. Okay, as I've mentioned previously, it is expected that you'll be spending about 12 hours a week in this class, okay, between all the learning activities that you're going to be doing. And that's a minimum, all right? I have some people who can manage it faster than that if they've taken chemistry before. Sometimes it works, but some people are going to need a lot longer than that, okay? I will tell you, when I took this class, I was typically spending 30 hours a week working on this material, okay? Now, I was really serious about it, and I understand that nobody spends that much time except me. I get that, but and that's not the expectation. I'm just telling you what my experience was. It took more time for me to get to where I got to be as comfortable with the material as I was. Okay. Now, you have a couple of different types of things that are here. So one of them is homework. And if you click on the homework, you'll see that there is one for each and every chapter. 1, 2, 2 for chapter 3, and only 1 for 7 and 8. Okay, so even though we have 2 for chapter 3, there's 1 for 7 and 8, so hopefully that balances out. You'll see that there are due dates given for each of these. These are your quote-unquote start dates. So those are the dates that those become available. These are your due dates for everything. Again, those are not hard and fast. If you need to change those, that's okay. We just need to talk about it. Remember that they're set the way they're set so that you do that material before the test. Because if you haven't done the Aleks material, you're not going to be prepared to take that test. Okay? So those are some of the things that we're absolutely expecting. So other than the homework, what else is in here? Well, everything else is related to the lab. And there are the virtual labs, which you'll actually go into and perform a little experiment. So it will walk you through, it allows you to do things, and I'll do some of the walkthroughs for this to show you what kind of stuff you're going to have to do and to talk through anything that's weird that you might run into and some of the other parts that go with it. And the other thing that you'll see is the quizzes. And you'll see that these are all listed as post labs. They are post labs. Now, are they really meant to be a quiz? No, but that's the only way I can ask you those questions in a way that makes sense. Okay, that's the only place I can put those questions. Okay, each one of these is an hour and a half that you get for them. You should not need that long at all. You do get 2 attempts on every quiz, so that means that if you do it the first time and you miss some things, you have an opportunity to ask questions, look at stuff, go back and do it again. I will tell you again that my expectation is that while you're doing the virtual labs, you're going to be taking notes. So when you're in one of these virtual labs, they will ask you to do some things. And what you need to be doing is writing down what they asked you to do, what calculations you had to do with that, any questions that they asked you. I know there are a couple of things where they say, would you expect it to do this, this, or this? All of those questions may appear on your post labs. So if you know how to do those calculations, and through the course of doing the lab, you should be able to figure out how to do those. And I'll walk through that when we go through the first one of these, which is why I said we do this later. You should be able to figure that out. But you can use your notes. You can use other websites. You can use the textbook. You can use pretty much anything. Okay, this is not a situation where you're in the lockdown browser. I don't care what you do or who you talk to. But understand that if you talk to somebody else and you get the answer from them, that means that you've robbed yourself of an opportunity to learn how to do that material before you take the test. And while these materials are not directly related to what we've talked about in lecture, they absolutely are related. Absolutely related. And so you may see questions from some of these things on your exams. I know that there is a question from the concentration of vinegar lab that is typically on one of my exams. There are things that are in the Vesper labs that are on my exams. All of these things become part of what we talk about. So it's important that you see that. Now, the goal with those labs, again, is to have you introduced to the material, to have you practice with that material, and then to use it in a practical setting. So the lab is meant to give you practical experience with some of the things that we've talked about in the lecture. And we can't do that for everything. So that's why there's not a lab for every topic that we talk about. But it is something that you need to be able to do. And one of the things that I want you to think about is the scientific method. So one of the things that I included in that success list includes the scientific method and the test taking and the problem solving. Okay, so think about the steps of the scientific method, because this is how you should be approaching these labs. Is, okay, I come in and I've been set to do this thing. What do I expect to happen? You should be able to answer that based on what you know from the lecture. You should be able to say, okay, in this experiment, I expect that it's going to do this. Then you collect your data and you look at your data and you say, oh, does my data say that that's what happened? Or does it contradict the hypothesis that I had? And we can never prove a hypothesis. There's no way to prove it. But there are lots of ways to disprove it. Okay, so if you collect data that's not consistent with that, then we need to do some modifications. And there's nothing wrong with needing to do modifications. It's absolutely a part of the learning process. And typically we learn the most when we need to make modifications. But it is not a fault to get to a place that is incorrect, as long as you then learn something from it. Okay. We'll talk about, this problem solving part has a lot to do with how I set up problems. It also is a process that I go through every time I am looking at something. So every time I approach one of these things, these are the steps that I take. And you'll see that when you go through the lectures, that I always approach things in a very systematic way. The reason that I do that is because it gives me a place to start when I don't know what to do. And that process of, okay, I'm always going to balance the equation first. I'm always going to set up the information that I've been given with that equation. I'm always going to start with this information that they've given me and say, what units are this? And what unit conversions am I going to have to do to get from here to where I want to go? So knowing that those are my steps, I can then make the connections with the unit conversions to see where I need to go. Okay, so that's the thing there. Anyway, so that's everything that you're going to find in Aleks. Now notice that everything has a due date that is associated with it. Your homeworks, if you turn them in past the due date, are 40% deduction, so the maximum score you could get is 60. If you turn in your post labs late, that is a 50% deduction, and I don't remember if there's a penalty for turning in the labs late or not. I will have to double check that, and actually I should be able to do that here. Because I'm not in the student view here, so let me see. Oh. Sorry, I talk to my computer when it's not doing what I want it to do. So I'm going to look at the virtual labs. And there is a penalty if you turn these in late again, and it's 50%. So for anything related to the lab, it's a 50% penalty if you turn it in late. So again, I'm going to give you opportunities to get points even if you missed a due date, but there is going to be a penalty for having done that. Okay. And remember, I understand flexibility is needed. And as long as I am approached about that, I'm okay with it. But in the working world, there are deadlines and there are penalties if those deadlines don't get hit. So it is responsible of me to teach you how to hit those deadlines. Okay. It's something that you will need to be familiar with, because unfortunately we can't go into a job and say, no, I don't like that deadline, I'm going to give you this one. That's really not how most jobs go. Okay, and my attempt to do that once got me fired. Only time I've been fired, but I deserved it. Absolutely deserved it. So anyway, that's our intro into Aleks. I hope that will answer any of the questions that you may have about, getting in there, all of that stuff. The gradebook syncs to D2L, but it doesn't always do it exactly when you think it will do it. So it may not do it as soon as you're done with it. It may not do it until the due date for those materials. Okay. A couple of other things that we should talk about. There's 2 other things about Aleks that go over. And if we look in our D2L at our grades, I shouldn't be showing you this, but that's okay, because we don't have any scores yet. Okay, so I didn't want to look at my account settings. I'm going to do view as student and go to grades. There are 2 other things from Aleks that will come over. So your Pi progress, which is how much of those assignments you have completed, and your Aleks total grade. So your Aleks total grade is going to be based on the points that you could potentially get for the assignments you've been given, and how many of those points did you get. So you may not get 100% on that. It depends on how you perform in doing those things. The Pi progress, on the other hand, is going to look totally weird until the end of the term, because it's expecting that you're going to do these things, but we don't do all of those things, so it's going to look totally weird. Understand that right before the end of the semester, that will be modified. And as long as you've completed everything, then you should get 100% on that. Okay, so that's what we have there. Now, if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask. I am more than happy to answer those. But that is everything that I've got in terms of our intro to Aleks. All right, guys, thanks. I'll talk to you soon.